The stars used to belong to us. That's what the old veterans would say before they drank themselves into silence. Most people didn't believe them. Too many generations had passed since Earth fell, since the colonies went dark, and humanity became nothing more than a myth whispered in galactic halls. But I believed. I believed because I still had the old scars, ones etched into our bones, not skin. I was born in the tunnels of cinder rock, a mining colony buried under miles of slag and corporate rot. No sun, no sky, just endless walls, recycled air, and the boots of alien overlords crushing us down. We weren't called humans anymore. We were primals. Livestock that could dig, lift, bleed, and die. My name is Kieran. I was 29 when I saw the first spark of hope. Before that, hope was a luxury. You don't hold on to hope when you're shackled and fed fungus paste. You hold on to rage. That's what kept me breathing. The Drevek ran cinder rock, 8-foot-tall insectoids with claws that clicked when they walked. They didn't talk, they screeched, but when they wanted something, you knew. That week, they wanted production doubled, so they pulled us out of rest shifts, beat a few workers to death, and dumped their bodies in front of the forge pit. Motivation, they called it. It worked, for most, but I'd seen too many friends thrown away. I remembered my father's last breath, coughing blood after a Drevek snapped his ribs in half for slowing down. I remembered my mother's voice, singing old Earth lullabies in hiding until the day she disappeared. Probably sold. Or eaten. They didn't tell us. That morning, I stole a wire coil from the repair bay and tucked it into my sleeve. That was the beginning. It wasn't about escape. Not yet. It was about doing something, anything. That night, I jammed the coil into the energy socket of the supply drone. It short-circuited and exploded, taking out half a storage rack. They lined up 20 of us and dragged us into the square. The Drevek executioner was already there, claws slick with drying blood. I stared him down, even when they shoved me to my knees. Then something strange happened. A shadow broke across the skyline. A tremor rolled through the stone beneath us. The Drevek froze. Even their antennae twitched. We all looked up. There, slicing through the black smog above, was a ship. Sleek. Brutal. Human. Not a myth. Not a legend. Real. And it was ours. The Drevek opened fire with their plasma turrets. The ship didn't flinch. It dropped something, several somethings, like thunderbolts crashing to the ground. And then I saw them. Men, soldiers, not in shackles, not afraid. Clad in obsidian armor, bearing an emblem none of us had seen since the collapse. A broken earth wrapped in flame. They moved like wolves, gunning down Drevek with pinpoint fury. No hesitation, no mercy. And one of them, his face uncovered, looked straight at me. "You're free now," he said. It hit me like a punch to the chest. Humans were back. But more than that, we never really left. We'd been waiting, evolving, watching, and now we had returned to take back what was ours. The square was chaos. Fire from the drop pods still sizzled on the rock, and Drevek corpses littered the area. I'd never seen a Drevek die before. Not like this. Not begging. Not twitching in pools of their own blood. These humans, our kind, moved like machines forged in hate and memory. Silent, efficient, brutal. The one who spoke to me stood tall, black armor glinting with scorched blood. He wasn't young. His face bore deep lines, not just from age, but from war. He looked at me like I was something more than a number, not a primal, a man. "What's your name?" he asked, pulling me to my feet. "Kieran," I said. My voice cracked like it hadn't been used for years. Maybe it hadn't. He nodded. "Kieran, you got a choice. Stay and die under them, or fight and die free." I didn't need time. "Give me a weapon." He smiled. Not kindly, but with a knowing grimness. He tossed me a Drevek plasma blade, the kind used to cut through rock and bone alike. I wasn't a soldier. I was a miner, a survivor. But in that moment, when I felt the heat of that blade in my hand and heard the screams of Drevek echoing through the halls, something old stirred in me. Rage, pride, humanity. We weren't the only ones. The cells opened all across Cinder Rock. Thousands of men emerged, pale and scarred, blinking at the sight of sky for the first time, if you could call it sky. Smoke and ash and fire. But it was freedom. The humans, the soldiers, called themselves the Black March, the last surviving division of Earth's military before the fall. They'd gone dark for over a century, hiding in the deep systems, rebuilding, training, waiting for the day they could strike. This was that day. We moved through the tunnels like rats turned wolves. The Drevek were organized, brutal, but not prepared for rebellion. Not like this. Not with armed humans, real soldiers leading the charge. We took back the barracks first, then the forge. When we hit the communications tower, the Drevek commander sent a full squad of enforcers. They didn't last 10 minutes. I watched Kale, a tall man with eyes like burnt coal, rip one in half with a rail axe. Another soldier, Droon, laughed like a lunatic as he burned 2 Drevek alive with their own energy fuel. They weren't just soldiers, they were monsters. Our monsters. I felt fear, not of them, but of what humanity had become to survive. After the tower was secured, we gathered in what used to be the command chamber. Flickering lights, blood on the walls, screens displaying dead signals. The commander, he never gave us his name, stood on the platform and looked us over. "You've been told you were slaves, animals, less than nothing," he said. "That ends now. You're human, and humans don't forget." The room went silent. He let the weight of the moment settle. This isn't just a rescue. This is a message. To every race, every empire, every bastard who thought they could wipe us out. You didn't end us. You buried us. And now we're digging our way out. He turned to me. "You ready to burn their cities, Kieran?" I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I want them to feel what we felt. I want them to beg." He nodded once. Then he handed me a rifle. The rifle was heavier than I expected, but it felt right in my hands. Cold steel, black as space, and humming with quiet power. I gripped it like it was a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing. The others looked at me, not as a worker or a broken man, but as one of them now. A soldier. We didn't waste time. The Black March didn't believe in speeches or ceremonies. We had work to do, pain to deliver. Our next target was the subsurface transport bay. The Drevek used it to move ore, slaves, and weapons between colonies. If we took it, we'd cut off their spine. The commander laid out the plan. 2 squads to flank the west and south tunnels. I was assigned to Alpha Squad. That meant front line. We moved through the dark like shadows. No talking, just the sound of boots and breath. Every man around me had seen more death than I could imagine, but they walked like they'd already made peace with it. No hesitation, no fear. That was the difference. We'd been afraid for generations. We were taught to flinch, to obey, to survive. But these men, they were done surviving. They came to win. The Drevek had fortified the entrance, automated turrets and heat sensors ready to cut down anything warm-blooded. We waited while Kale hacked the control node. Sparks flew, and the doors hissed open with a screech. Then all hell broke loose. Turrets came alive. Gunfire lit up the dark. The first man through the door took a round to the chest and went down. No sound, no scream. The second threw a charge and cleared the path. I moved in behind them, firing blind, the recoil punching my shoulder with every shot. Drevek soldiers, armor-plated, eyes glowing, rushed us with plasma blades and jagged rifles. I didn't think. I reacted. My blade sliced into one's throat, Hot blood sprayed my face. I didn't stop. I didn't feel guilt. I felt alive. We cleared the entrance in under 10 minutes, bodies stacked on both sides. My arms shook, lungs burned, but I'd never felt so awake. Cale slapped me on the back, his grin feral. "You're one of us now." We pushed forward, deeper into the bay. Explosions rocked the walls. The Drevek were retreating, confused. They weren't used to losing, especially not to us. That's when we saw it. Cages, dozens of them, packed with prisoners. Human, some barely alive, others long gone, but one man, skin like stone, eyes fierce even in chains, locked eyes with me. "You real?" he croaked. I nodded, breaking the lock with the butt of my rifle. "We're back." He laughed. A dry, broken sound, but it carried something rare. Hope. We freed over 80 men that day. Most couldn't fight. Too weak, too broken. But just seeing us, it meant something. Like a curse was breaking, like the universe had finally remembered what we were. We sent a message to the other colonies through the control station. Short, sharp. "Humanity has returned. Prepare to rise." By nightfall, word had spread. Signals from other outposts, riots, explosions, murmurs of rebellion, a spark turning into wildfire. The commander gathered us again, his voice low but sharp. "This is just the beginning. They think we're a ghost story. Let's make their nightmares real." And for the first time in my life, I believed we could win. Because the truth was simple. They thought we were extinct, but we were evolving. And now we were coming for everything they took. The days that followed blurred into violence, sweat, and fire. We didn't sleep much. The Black March kept pushing, strike after strike, colony after colony. And we followed. Cale, Dren, me, and a growing army of liberated men who were hungry to take their pain out on something that finally bled back. The Drevek didn't understand us. Not really. They fought with tactics, formations, logic. We fought with fury. By the time we reached the refinery core, the heart of the Drevek supply route, they'd started to panic. Whole legions were pulled from neighboring systems to hold the line. They still thought we were a localized uprising, a bad infection. But we were already in their bloodstream. We stormed the core from 3 angles. I was point again. My armor was still pieced together from scrap, but my hands were steady now. No more shaking. I knew how to kill. I'd learned the rhythm of it. Shoot, move, slash, breathe, repeat. We breached the refinery's outer walls with demolition charges, the explosion sending slag and twisted steel raining down. Inside, it was worse. Hundreds of workers, our people, crammed into sweat pits, whipped, starved. Some looked at us with hollow eyes like they couldn't believe we were real. Then they saw the Drevek fall. Saw them scream, beg, die. And something shifted. Men who hadn't stood in years picked up blades, wrenched steel pipes from the floor, began swinging. It turned into a massacre. Not just soldiers, everyone fought. Old men, young boys, half-dead workers with missing limbs using tools as weapons. It was no longer a rescue, it was a reckoning. And in the middle of it, I found him. Commander Naxel of the Drevek, slithering through the smoke, trying to escape in a crawler. I chased him down the corridor, blood pumping like thunder in my skull. He turned once, hissed something in that gutter language of his, and fired. The shot grazed my leg. But I didn't stop. I slammed into him, drove the butt of my rifle into his mouth until it cracked like breaking stone. He fell, twitching, clawing at the floor. I stood over him, breath ragged, the barrel pressed against his skull. "You remember Earth?" I asked. He gurgled something. I pulled the trigger. I didn't do it for revenge. Not really. I did it so the others could see. The Drevek weren't gods. They could die like anyone else. After the refinery burned, the commander called for full occupation of Cinder Rock. Not just the underground. Everything. We surfaced for the first time, and what we saw wasn't a planet. It was a graveyard. Dead cities, sunless skies, wreckage stretching as far as the eye could see. But beneath all that ash and ruin, we found something. Deep in an old earth vault, buried under stone and steel. A beacon. Ancient tech, human-made, still blinking, still alive. The commander activated it. And somewhere, far across the stars, someone answered. The signal echoed through the stars, a forgotten frequency only the old ones would recognize. It was a distress call buried in Earth's last code, one meant for allies who no longer existed. At least that's what we thought. Until the reply came. A single word in fractured English, distorted but clear enough to send chills down every spine in that bunker. Acknowledged. We didn't know who or what sent it. The signal came from deep space, outside the known systems, uncharted, unreachable under Drevek control for decades. The commander stared at the monitor, eyes hard. "They're still out there," he muttered. "The other fleets, the lost arcs, they survived." It changed everything. Until that moment, we were insurgents, rebels striking back at overlords. Now we had something more dangerous than weapons. We had history backing us. Word spread fast. Our numbers swelled. Every pit we broke open, every Drevek station we turned to rubble brought more men to our cause. The weak found strength. The broken remembered fury. But the Drevek weren't done. They retaliated hard. Orbital strikes, biological fog released into the deeper tunnels. In Sector 7, we lost over 400 fighters in a single night. Burned alive, gassed, hunted. I saw Dren die during one of those strikes. A tank shell ripped through the wall and caught him mid-shout. No goodbye, just blood and silence. I didn't cry. None of us did. We just loaded up and kept moving. Because grief didn't matter anymore. Only the mission. We called the next operation Ash Storm. The plan was madness. Hit the Drevek Central Communication Node in orbit, the one that controlled their entire network across this region of space. It meant launching from surface level, hijacking an orbital skiff, and surviving long enough to plant DT charges in a floating fortress built to withstand a war. Kale came with me, along with a squad of 6 others. No one expected to return. The skiff was an old mining hauler we'd retrofitted for combat. Barely. We took off under cover of a sandstorm, radar scrambling as we climbed past the atmosphere. The moment we broke orbit, we saw it. The Drevek node wasn't just a station, it was a city in the sky. Spikes of black metal, lights pulsing like a beating heart. Gun batteries and patrol drones swarmed its surface like insects. We had one shot. I piloted while Kale loaded the warhead. Our team dropped in hard, crashing through one of the maintenance ports. We didn't have stealth. We had rage. They met us in waves, Drevek elites in powered exoframes. For the first time I felt fear again, not the kind that paralyzes, but the kind that sharpens. That reminds you every second could be your last. We fought room to room, blood painting the walls. By the time we reached the core, only 3 of us were still standing. Kale was bleeding from the gut. He leaned against the console, grinning through blood. "Get the job done, Kieran," he said. "Blow this fucking place to hell." I set the charges. We had 6 minutes. We ran. We didn't make it to the skiff. We dove into an escape pod just before the station erupted behind us in fire and screams. As the pod hurtled back to the surface, I looked at Kale. His eyes were closed. I wasn't sure he was breathing. But I was, and the Drevek comm node wasn't. That day, across 5 systems, their communications went dark. And for the first time in generations, silence worked in our favor. We landed hard, the pod smashing into the outer rim of the black dunes. No signal, no backup, just me, Kale's unconscious body, and a wrecked escape pod buried halfway into the ground. I dragged him out into the dust, laid him under the broken hatch for shade, and waited. 3 days passed before the scouts found us. By then, Cale had slipped into a coma. Infection had taken root. He'd fought like hell, but the Drevek blade that cut him had been laced with something. Something alien. Flesh turned grey. His breath was shallow. And all I could do was watch. They airlifted us back to Cinder Rock, which now looked nothing like the pit I was born in. The banners of the Black March flew high. Fires were out. Food was flowing. Men walked upright again. There was laughter, guns, training drills, hope. But it all felt temporary, because the Drevek weren't going to stay quiet for long. 2 days later, the answer came. A fleet. Not a patrol, not a response unit, a full battle fleet. Drevek carriers, cruisers, dreadnoughts, hundreds of them, blocking the skies over the region like a swarm of black stars. They didn't send a message, didn't negotiate. They were done playing. The commander gathered us in the war hall, now rebuilt inside what used to be a Drevek fortress. His face was tight, colder than I'd ever seen it. "They're not coming to suppress us this time. They're coming to erase us." No one spoke. "They fear us again. That's why they brought everything." He turned to me. "You hit their nerve, Kieran. You reminded them what humanity does when it's cornered." I didn't feel pride. I felt tired. We didn't have the numbers. We didn't have ships. Just men, ground defenses, and fire in our veins. We prepped every turret, every mine, every charge we had. The cities around us were emptied. Women and children, what few had survived, were moved underground. No one ran. No one begged to leave. We all knew what this was. Our last stand. Cale didn't wake. He laid in the infirmary, machines keeping him alive. I checked in once before heading to the walls. Sat beside him, told him what was coming. "You missed the fun part," I said quietly. "Now it's hell again." I left before I could break. The first shots came at sunrise. Massive ion beams ripped into the mountain ridge. Dust storms turned orange. Skies cracked. And the first wave dropped. Thousands of Drevek troops in reinforced pods slamming into the earth like angry gods. We met them head-on. I fought with a stolen Drevek pulse cannon, my shoulder already dislocated from recoil. Men died screaming around me. Some didn't even get a shot off before they were torn apart. But we held. By nightfall, the fields were soaked in black and red. But the fleet above? Still untouched. We couldn't reach them. That's when the commander gave the order no one expected. "All nuclear payloads, fire on orbit." I stared at him. "We'll kill ourselves." He didn't blink. Better we die free than serve. And just as the first nukes were armed, something happened. The sky opened. Not with fire, but with light. Ships, sleek, enormous, bearing no flag we recognized, but carrying one unmistakable message. Human. The beacon had worked. And we weren't alone anymore. The sky shimmered with unnatural light, silver streaks cutting through the darkness like celestial blades. For a second, everyone on the ground, human and Drevek alike, paused mid-battle. The explosions, the blood, the screams, they all seemed to fade under that eerie brilliance. Then the ships came. Not Drevek, not ours. Sleek, jet-black vessels with impossible curves and no markings, yet they moved with purpose, with memory. They weren't part of the Black March. These were from outside, from whatever corners of space humanity had vanished to during the fall. These were ghosts, and they had come home. They didn't bother with warnings. The first shot from the lead vessel split the Drevek dreadnought in half. Clean, precise, surgical. A second followed, vaporizing a carrier before it could deploy reinforcements. The Drevek fleet scattered like insects in sunlight, suddenly scrambling for formation. They were no longer hunters. They were prey. On the ground, we watched in awe, barely able to believe what we were seeing. For a moment, I didn't even feel the ache in my shoulder or the blood soaking my sleeve. I didn't feel the weight of the dead around me. I just stood there, mouth dry, heart hammering in my chest. I looked over at the commander. His face didn't change, not a flicker of surprise or relief. He just nodded. They finally answered. He turned to the comm officer. "Patch me in." The comms crackled. Static. Then a deep, calm voice. Undeniably human. "This is the Ark ship Providence. We've received your signal. Stand down your orbital weapons. We'll handle the sky." The commander smiled grimly and replied without hesitation. "Glad you're here. We'll take care of the ground." I gripped my cannon tighter and turned back toward the ridge, where the Drevek drop pods still fell like meteors. If Providence was dealing with the orbit, we still had our work cut out for us. The second wave hit harder than the first. Drevek berserkers, mutated brutes twice the size of their regular troops, stormed through the fire line. One of them tore through 4 men like they were paper before I managed to plant a charge on its chest and blow it apart. The blast knocked me back 10 feet, but I got up. I had to get up. Because the others looked at me now, not as a survivor, as a leader. It felt strange. I wasn't born for this. I didn't grow up in a military academy or on a battlefield. I grew up in chains. I spent my childhood dodging boots and hiding bruises. And now they waited for my orders like I was meant to do this. Maybe I was. We pulled back to the ridge's third line, where heavier artillery had been set. Tanks built from Drevek scrap fired plasma bursts into the swarm. Drones hacked from mining bots dropped canisters of nerve gas into enemy ranks. We used everything we had. Nothing was off limits, no rules, no mercy. That's when I saw her. Sira. She wasn't supposed to be fighting. She was one of the medics, small, quiet, with eyes that always looked too sad for her age. But there she was, dragging a wounded boy to safety while bullets zipped past her. I ran to cover her, took a shot in the thigh doing it. She looked at me, wide-eyed, and shook her head. "You shouldn't be here," she said, trying to drag me now. I could say the same. She laughed. It wasn't a happy sound, more like a release of something that had been building too long. We ducked into cover, blood soaking both our legs. "You think we'll live through this?" she asked, not like she needed comfort, just an answer. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But if we do, I'm going to sleep for a month." That made her smile, just a little. The sky boomed again. Another Drevek ship down. The Providence and its sister vessels were carving through their fleet like gods wielding thunder. For every ship we lost during the fall, they had returned with tenfold vengeance. But it was the way they fought that left me stunned. No wasted shots, no hesitation, no missed targets. These weren't just survivors. They were trained, refined, perfected. I later learned that these weren't just remnants of Earth's fleets. These were the results of Project Exodus, the secret escape program launched in the final days of Earth's collapse. Thousands of ships launched into the void, AI-guided, human-helmed, tasked with rebuilding and waiting for a signal. Our signal, and now they were here. The Drevek saw it too. You could see the panic in their formations, the shift in their attacks. They weren't pushing anymore. They were retreating, trying to escape back to their pods, their fleet, anything. But we didn't let them. The commander issued the final command just before nightfall. "No prisoners." We pushed hard. Every alley, every tunnel, every ridge. The Drevek fell by the hundreds, then thousands. For every man we lost, we took 10 of theirs. By the time the last of their fleet limped into hyperspace, the ground was ours. Burning, bloody, but ours. We stood at the ridge after the last shot was fired, covered in dirt and blood. Around us, fires still burned. The smell of death was thick. But there was no more gunfire, no more screaming, just silence. And then a sound I hadn't heard in years, cheering. It started low, like someone didn't quite believe it. Then louder, men crying out in relief, in triumph, in disbelief. Some dropped to their knees, some raised rifles to the sky, some just stood there, staring at the stars. We had survived, and more than that, we had won. I limped back to the infirmary that night, my thigh burning with every step. I found Cale still unconscious but stable. The machines had stabilized his vitals. Whatever the Drevek poisoned him with, the new medics from the Providence were fighting it. "You missed it, brother," I whispered, gripping his hand. "We made them run." He didn't respond, but I like to think he heard me. The commander stood beside me soon after. He was tired, older than I'd thought, but his eyes still burned with fire. "You're not just a soldier anymore, Kieran," he said. "You're a symbol now. They'll look to you." I shook my head. "I'm not ready for that." He shrugged. "None of us were. But someone's got to remind them what it means to be human." He turned and walked away. And I sat there in the dim light, the weight of everything settling on my shoulders. We had won a battle. But the war? It had just begun. Because across the stars, others still lived like we had. Under chains, forgotten, buried in silence. And now they'd heard our signal. Now they knew we were still out there, still fighting, still human. The celebrations didn't last long. Victory had a smell, smoke, sweat, gunpowder, and it lingered long after the cheers faded. The dead still lined the ridge. We buried them in silence, wrapped in tarps and whatever cloth we had left. No names, no markers, just lines of scorched earth, rows of crude flags stuck into the soil, each one a reminder that we didn't walk away from this clean. The Drevek fleet was broken, scattered, but not gone. They'd retreat to the core worlds, rally what remained, and return with a vengeance. Everyone knew it, even the commander. That's why he gathered us one last time in the crater that had once been a communication hub and now served as the heart of our new base. We stood in our blood-stained gear, weapons still in hand, muscles sore and bones bruised, listening. "They'll come back," he said simply. "They'll bring more ships, better weapons, worse monsters." His voice didn't shake, neither did ours. But they made one mistake. They gave us a story to tell. He pointed to the stars above, where the remaining ships from the Providence fleet hovered like silent watchers. "We're not legends anymore. We're proof." That word hit different now. Proof. That we had survived. That humanity wasn't just some myth lost in the ashes of Earth. We were here, bleeding, breathing, fighting. After the War Council, I walked through the camp, if you could still call it that. It was becoming something else now. Bigger, structured. We had proper supplies coming down from the Ark fleet. Rations, medics, real beds, and plans. Every liberated colony sent messengers, scrap-patched transports arriving by the hour, dropping off fighters and engineers, old men with steel in their spines, young men with fire in their eyes. No uniforms, no central government, but a shared purpose. Reclamation. That word began spreading like fire. We weren't hiding anymore. We were organizing. I visited Cale again, as I did every evening. He still hadn't woken, but he was stable. I pulled up a crate beside him, wiped the sweat from my brow, and talked to him like he could hear. "You'd like what it's becoming," I told him. "They're calling this place Fort Ember. Fitting name. It was Ash before, but now—" I stopped. No poetry, just truth. It's not just a fight anymore, Cale. It's a movement. The medic said he twitched once. That was enough. I left the infirmary with a new mission, one the commander didn't assign, but one I chose for myself. I was going to the outer rings, to the silent colonies where Drevek banners still flew, where no signal had come from, where they were still enslaved. I took a squad of 12, volunteers, men I'd fought beside, survivors who had nothing left to lose and everything to take back. We left at dusk in a dropship patched from the remains of 2 wrecked Drevek interceptors. It rattled like hell and stank of oil and melted circuits, but it flew. Our first stop was Roven 3, a mining world just like Cinder Rock. Same stink, same cold, same hopeless silence when we landed in the dead zone outside the worker barracks. The Drevek still ran this one, but not with soldiers. They used collaborators. Humans who sold out for comfort, safety, food. When we entered the main control facility, they didn't resist. They tried to talk, negotiate. One even offered us credits, like that meant anything now. I shot him in the leg and told the rest to run. Some did. Some stayed and died. The workers didn't cheer when we freed them. They didn't even look us in the eyes. They'd forgotten how. We left them weapons, supplies, and a transmission beacon, told them more would come. Some stared like they didn't believe us. But one boy, skinny, maybe 16, saluted me when I left. Just one. That was enough. We hit 3 more colonies over the next 3 weeks. Each one different, each one worse. On Veltrax 2, we found a breeding facility. Men strapped to machines, dead-eyed. Some mutilated, genetic experiments the Drevek never documented. I burned it all, every inch, no mercy. On Marnock, we encountered real resistance. Drevek warlords holding a mountain stronghold. Took us 4 days to break them, lost 4 men. Buried them in Drevek armor just to make a point. On the 5th stop, I found something that stopped me cold. An old Earth flag, torn, faded, but real. It was hanging in the corner of a resistance hideout. The woman who showed it to me couldn't have been more than 30, but her eyes carried decades of pain. We thought we were the last. She whispered. I stared at that flag for a long time, remembered the stories my father told me about Earth before it fell. He'd never seen it himself. Just stories passed down through fists and fire. Now I was standing in front of the last scrap of it. Proof we were never completely gone. When we returned to Fort Ember, we weren't the same. We'd seen too much, done too much. But we brought back more than pain. We brought back men, hundreds. The resistance was no longer scattered. It was unified. Not under a government, not under a flag, under an idea. That humanity could rise again. The commander met me in the war hall, now reinforced with plasteel and maps. So many maps. Worlds to take, worlds to free. You did good, he said, but it's only beginning. I nodded. Let them come. Let them bring their fleets, their machines, their terror. I looked up at the map. And we'll bring us. He smiled. Not with joy, but with approval. I turned to the men behind me, those I fought with, bled with, lost with. They stood tall now, clean armor, new scars. And for the first time, I saw what we really were. Not rebels, not survivors, builders. We were rebuilding what they tried to destroy. Not the same version of humanity. A better one that remembered pain, one forged in the deepest pits of despair and born again in fire. And maybe one day we'd go back to Earth. Not as refugees, but as conquerors reclaiming their throne. As I walked out of the war hall that night, the stars above looked closer somehow. And I knew. They feared us again, because we were no longer broken. We were awake, and humanity? Humanity had returned in force.